Welcome to Democrats Discuss, our monthly television show which will bring you the latest in policies that are being developed both statewide, nationally, and internationally. My name is Joe McNamara. I am the chairman of the Rhode Island Democratic Party and also a state representative for District 19 in Warwick and Cranston. Our entire world was shaken this past November 13th when terrorists attacked the City of Light, Paris, an unprecedented act of violence where 129 individuals lost their lives, including one American. Pope Francis had stated that it looked like it could be the beginning of a world war. John Kerry has said this unprecedented attack has brought about cooperation from all the nations of the world to end these terrorist activities by a group called ISIL or ISIS. Today, I am very pleased to have two national leaders that are recognized across our nation serving in the United States Congress. We have Congressman James Langevin and Congressman David Cicilline. Welcome, Congressman.
Thank you. Well,
thank you,
great to be with
Chairman.
you.
Great to be with you.
I would be very curious. My first question would be to both of you. What has been the reaction in Congress and your reaction to these horrible attacks in Paris?
Well, first of all, we condemn them in the strongest possible terms. It was unspeakable acts of violence that ISIL was behind and took responsibility for, that carried out these heinous attacks. We stand united with the people of France, the people of Paris, and our thoughts and prayers are with the victims of those horrible attacks. This is clearly now a time where it's a call to action for peaceful nations of the world to unite and to pool our resources, focus our attention of how we defeat this terrorist organization that is trying to and is spreading their violent, radical effort throughout the world. And it's not just one community or one city or one country that is under attack. In many ways, it was an attack on all peace-loving countries and people around the world, and it has to be condemned. And wherever possible, we need to stop ISIL and see that that organization is dismantled.
Yeah, I mean, I think every American who saw the news accounts of that was horrified by the brutality of this terrorist organization. France is our oldest ally, and the importance of our shared values as a country that promotes equality and freedom and liberty. There's a special connection between our countries, but the unspeakable violence, I think, horrified everyone. And I think, as Congressman Langevin said, this is really a moment for us to be working very closely with our allies in the region to, first of all, do all that we can to prevent terrorist attacks like this from happening, but also to focus on the underlying conflict in Syria. And, it's a very complicated situation involving Iran and Russia and lots of other actors. But I think there was some good news coming out of the Vienna talks, beginning to set a framework for a post-Assad Syria. But first and foremost, our primary responsibility as members of Congress is how do we keep our constituents, how do we keep our country safe? I think that's everyone's first responsibility. And how do we ensure that we have the resources devoted to both our defense, but also our intelligence gathering? How are we working in partnership with our allies in the region, so we're sharing intelligence? But this is a global war on terror that I think the Paris attacks brought home more directly maybe than people when they saw this conflict in Syria and Iraq. It feels very distant. But I think Daesh's or ISIS's activities outside the region now are a real game changer, and I think a real call for action by all parties in the region and all parties who value basic human decency and the kind of principles of humanity.
Congressman Langevin, what could we do as a nation to prevent these types of attacks. Do you have any ideas on that?
Sure. I've served on every national security committee in the Congress, and including serving 8 years on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. And so I understand the nature of the threat and the challenge we face. We have got to pool our resources in terms of close cooperation on intelligence sharing, on law enforcement cooperating together, doing everything we can to identify the threats before they wind up being an action that gets carried out. And again, that comes with collaboration and coordination. Certainly we have better intelligence with respect to who has gone into Iraq and Syria and is fighting with ISIL, that's gaining training and expertise, only to come back. There are upwards of a couple hundred individuals with U.S. passports who have gone over to Iraq or Syria and likely fighting with ISIL in those conflict zones, and then they wind up coming home. The FBI has a good handle on who those individuals are on with U.S. passports. The bigger challenge, of course, is that although we're dealing with a couple of hundred individuals with U.S. passports, there are thousands from European nations who have gone into Iraq and Syria, fought with ISIL, presumably, and then come home. And that is really the bigger challenge that we have. And because many of those nations are from visa waiver countries, it is of great concern to me that those individuals could very easily come here to the United States. And recently I was in Munich at the International Security Conference with Senator McCain, Senator Whitehouse, and I had the ability to question the Minister of Defense from Great Britain and asked him about this challenge because they don't have as good a understanding of surveilling who these individuals are. And in particular, because of European privacy laws, they are not always able to share the intelligence that we need to know to understand who these individuals are. We have to close that gap. It's not so much a problem with Great Britain, as the Minister of Defense said. With Great Britain, the privacy laws are a bit different than other parts of Europe, but it is a challenge understanding who these individuals are and what their intent is they come here to the United States. It's one of those things that keeps me up at night.
And Congressman?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we have got to do is really look in a serious way at the visa waiver program that Congressman Langevin just mentioned. There are 38 countries that participate in that, and those are people who are allowed to come to the United States with no visa at all. So this is a real issue, and we've got to look at that program and be sure that security safeguards are in place. We also have to continue to keep pressure on our allies in the region, particularly Turkey, to stem the flow of foreign fighters, people going into Syria, being radicalized and fighting with Daesh and ISIS and coming back out. And I do think we've got to really keep pressure on many of our allies in the region who would be doing more in this fight against this terrorist organization. We have good intelligence services in this country. We have to be sure that they're well funded and they have the resources they need, both to collect intelligence, to be able to receive it and share it from our allies, and then to do the things that are necessary with the law enforcement community to keep people safe. These are hardworking men and women that do a terrific job, but we have to be sure they have the resources that they need to continue to do this work.
Congressman Langevin, you've served on the House Armed Service Committee, and you've also developed quite a bit of national and international expertise serving on the Cybersecurity Subcommittee. I know you've been a vocal proponent of that. How does this work? The cybersecurity, is that a key element in securing the United States right now?
Sure is. I mean, that's a vital concern to me. I've been at it for many years, as you mentioned, Joe. And cybersecurity is going to become increasingly important going forward, not only from a national security perspective, but also from an economic security perspective. So we will never again, for example, have modern warfare that doesn't have a cyber component to it. Whether it's respected cyber defense or cyber offense, cyber weapons, what once you could only accomplish through use of kinetic weapons to damage a particular area or a target can now be done with a few keystrokes. So that is a vital concern going forward. We have to do a better job at protecting our cyber networks. And the challenge is that the United States, there's no other country on the face of the planet that makes as much use of the internet as the United States, or is as dependent on the internet as the United States. So therefore, because the internet was built with this free and open architecture in mind, security was never a forethought, it was an afterthought. And we're trying to play catch up now, and it makes us very vulnerable. And our adversaries or enemies are taking advantage of that. So it's not only from a security perspective, but also it affects our economy. There are hundreds of billions of dollars a year that are lost as a result of cyber crime, cyber espionage. Some estimates are over $400 billion a year, much of that coming out of the United States. That hurts our economic competitiveness. It also hurts the job prospects here in the country. So one of the biggest perpetrators, of course, is China. I'm glad that the president has reached this agreement with China of establishing some rules of the road. I'll wait to see if it actually results in actions and China actually lives up to it. But they have been one of the biggest perpetrators of cyber espionage, and it is of great concern to me.
Scary. And Congressman Cicilline, you serve on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Could you tell the viewers, how does that committee interact with Homeland Security? Is it, do they do presentations? Do they keep you informed as to potential threats, et cetera?
Yeah, we have a number of responsibilities that relate to our relationship with other countries. And so that means the State Department Secretary Kerry, our ambassadors, national security experts, others come before the committee to testify. We recently had a joint committee actually with the Homeland Security Committee on the rise of radicalism in the region. And so, one of the things that we've been advocating for, at least some of us on the committee, is for the president really to come forth and for Congress to take up an authorization for the use of military force. We're engaged in a war in Syria. We have advisors there, we have others on the ground, we're involved in airstrikes, and the administration is using an authorization from 14 years ago, after the September 11th bombings. We really need to have a clear articulation of what the strategy is, what are our objectives, how do we achieve our objectives, and what authorization we'll give to the president to use force. What I'm really concerned about is this notion of mission creep, where we sort of start with some advisors. And look, ISIS has to be defeated. They have to be destroyed. They're a threat to the long-term national security interests of our country. We cannot allow a terrorist organization like that to survive. But it's incumbent on the president really to articulate how do we achieve this objective, and what role do we play, and what role do our allies in the region play. There are many folks in that region of the world who I get the sense are sort of waiting for the United States to do this job, and where I think should be part of the solution, and we've always done our part, but we've got to keep the pressure on Saudi Arabia, Qatar, others in the region, Turkey, to be doing what they should be doing to defeat this terrorist organization. And I think that discussion should happen in the context of a public debate about the authorization for the use of military force, what it means, what kind of commitment we'll have to make, and then the American people will hear that argument, and Congress has to make a decision whether or not to authorize that. But this is a serious, complicated conflict, but I think it's incumbent on the president to articulate what the objective is, how we're going to achieve that objective, and then receive authorization from Congress to do it.
I agree 100%. Yesterday, just going about, hitting a couple of coffee shops in the neighborhood, speaking to people after they got home from church, grabbing a cup of coffee, several people had mentioned to me that it feels as though we are at war. So I think your comments are very well taken, and certainly both of you have made good points, especially about the cybersecurity issue, the way these terrorist groups operate. I'd just like to shift the conversation a little to some of the work that you're doing. Congressman Cicilline, I love the title of this particular act that you're involved with, the Make It in America Act. Could you just take a minute or two to describe the objectives of that particular initiative?
Sure. Manufacturing is obviously a very important part of Rhode Island's economy. We have a long history, the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, Slater Mill and the steam engine. So we have a very long history, and we have a set of policies in Washington, unfortunately, that don't support American manufacturing, and in many ways undermine American manufacturing. And so we've put together a very comprehensive agenda called Make It in America that has about 30 pieces of legislation that are all designed to help rebuild American manufacturing. We make the best products in the world. People want to buy stuff made in America. But go into a store and try to find something made in America, it's hard. And part of the reason is we have some policies in Washington that really make it harder to do that. And so one of the bills that I've introduced is this Make It in America Manufacturing Act, which provides resources to states for them to coordinate the development of regional strategies, kind of manufacturing hubs, so that people can really help rebuild it, not just company by company, but really have a strategy around what needs to be done. It will help retrofit factories, retrain workers, buy new equipment. One of the things I learned, and there's a great story here, we have a company in Woonsocket, a textile company, Sam Brickles, and he called me and said, they're making uniforms for the Afghan National Police, and we don't even get to bid on the work. And anyway, we've come to find out that was happening. We were buying it from outside the United States, so not even helping American manufacturers. I offered an amendment to the defense authorization. I call it the Brickle Amendment. That requires the Defense Department in that instance. And lo and behold, he now is making berets and other parts of equipment.
Oh, that's
He's
great.
been able to double the workforce of his beret division. So that's just one example. But we've got great manufacturers here. And if we can change some policies in Washington, stop giving tax breaks to companies that ship American jobs overseas, instead give it to companies who keep jobs here. There's a whole set of bills, but it's a real advantage for Rhode Island. It positions, I think, very strongly to really see growth in that area. And they're great paying jobs. They pay above non-manufacturing jobs. So making things in Rhode Island, making things in this country, I think is a really key part of our future economic development.
Speaking of great paying jobs, Congressman Langevin, I know you've been a huge supporter of Electric Boat. I have a nephew that owns a business at Quonset, and that's all he talks about is, Congressman Langevin, is there anything that I can do to help him out? We're just so grateful to see the expansion of Electric Boat. And recently, they had a major announcement that they're going to be building a new series of nuclear submarines. How will, in terms of employment, will that add greatly to the number of Rhode Islanders that are employed there, Congressman Langevin?
It absolutely will. Very proud of the work the men and women at Electric Boat are doing on the Virginia-class program right now, building 2 Virginia-class submarines a year. As a senior member of the House Armed Services Committee, I have an vantage point of understanding how important that platform is as a national security platform and helping keep us dominant on the seas. But it's also a very important jobs program there as well. We have great talented workers that go to work every day at Electric Boat building the 2 Virginia-class submarines. Very soon, we will also be building the Ohio replacement program. So the Ohio replacement, the most survivable and important part of the nuclear triad, are sea launched ballistic missiles that are out on patrol at ocean and at the ready should, God forbid, they should ever be needed. But those Ohio-class submarines are aging out. They're going to start retiring sometime around the 2020 timeframe. So we need to start building a new successor program, the Ohio replacement program. And it is every expectation those boats will be built right here in Rhode Island. And that means that EB right now is in the process of hiring hundreds of new workers, and that workforce is going to grow significantly over time. Now, the challenge is, of course, that they have, as well as many other manufacturers in Rhode Island, is having workers with the right skills to do the jobs that are needed to be done. So Dave and I just came from a press conference with Governor Raimondo announcing the Real Jobs Rhode Island program, and it was 26 grants that were given out to Rhode Island companies that are helping in this public-private partnership, if you will, job training and making sure that our workers have the right skills to do the jobs that are available right now. It's been very frustrating as we go around the state and visit with manufacturers or visit with business owners, and you say, when are you going to be hiring? And they're saying, we have jobs available right now, but we can't find workers with the skills that we need done. And as David has said, he's working on his Make It in America legislation, and we are seeing companies and jobs coming back from overseas. If we want our companies to succeed and grow, we have to have workers with the skills that we need to be done. So I co-chair the Career and Technical Education Caucus in the Congress, focus like a laser on this job training, fixing our skills gap problem. And again, the program that the governor announced with federal resources that are going to help in this job training, both with educators and with business at the table driving this program, it's going to be a real shot in the arm for Rhode Island workers and our economy.
I have neighbors that work at Electric Boat, and they've had great careers there. They're the type of jobs that can support a family.
Absolutely.
They have good benefits. They've been a great employer in the state of Rhode Island, so I was thrilled when I heard that. Speaking of
Just to add one
young
thing,
people in
it's going to
training,
allow Electric Boat to double its workforce, or almost double over the next decade. And as Jim just mentioned, one of the recipients of that job training grant today, again, which was federal money we all advocated for, was Electric Boat, because they're going to have such a demand.
Right.
But as Jim said, every business you go to almost, they say, look, I've got a job, I can't find someone with just those skills.
Right.
And kudos to the governor, because she's designed this program so it's really demand driven, so that they're talking to employers saying, what do you need? Not imagining what we think workers need. What do you need
Jobs
to
that
hire
are there.
somebody? Real Jobs Rhode Island is what it's called. And again, great partnership with the state on that.
Well, that's good news. Good news for especially the young people in Rhode Island, who some of the millennials are saying, you know, what's available to me? Speaking of whom, the other day, Congressman Cicilline, you had an event that targeted our young people. Could you just tell us briefly about that?
Sure. I had what I called Town Hall for the Next Generation, which was a town hall where I invited young people from 18 to 35 as an opportunity really just to talk to me about what they saw as the most important issues in their lives, what they thought I should be working on, what they were concerned about, to hear their ideas on a number of issues. You know, I have a Congressional Youth Cabinet, I have some other things, but I don't, you know, I want to hear directly from constituents in a variety of ways, and so this was a great opportunity to get young people in a cool space and just open up. I'll tell you, we had almost 200 young people there, really well informed, lots of great questions, lots of great ideas. It was very valuable for me to be able to hear directly from them.
And Congressman Langevin, over the years, I know you've had special events for both the young and the old. The seniors are very, you know, I know they love you. But what are your ideas in terms, how can we better engage the young people, the millennials?
Sure. Well, I have several advisory committees, and everything from issues affecting seniors to veterans and military issues to affordable housing, education. One of them is Youth Advisory Committee, and we have representatives from all the high schools and the colleges in my district, and we just had our inaugural meeting. I did this last year, and we're doing it again, expanded it to include both college as well as high school this year. And it's a way to engage in young people, just in the way that David outlined, and I think a town hall meeting is a great idea as well. But we need to hear from the millennials and what is important to them, and how can we reassure them that the policies that we're working on are reflective of the things that they're concerned with. You know, you hear constantly about, you know, how am I going to be able to afford to go to school? That's a real big challenge. Right. You know, we are constantly looking for ways to increase Pell Grants, making sure that college loans are affordable. I think that it's outrageous, quite frankly, that the federal government it makes a profit on student loans. We've got to change that. We were able to prevent it from the student loan interest rate from doubling significantly over the just about a year and a half ago, and it put a cap on it. But this cap is still too high. It's tied to the prime rate, plus 2 or 3 percentage points, even higher if you're a graduate student or a family getting a loan. But I certainly there's some cost associated with administering that kind of a program, and we should cover the bare minimum to make sure that it's not costing anything per se. But over and above that, the federal government should not be making a profit that goes then into the general fund. So I know David and I are both co-sponsoring legislation to change that. But these are the types of things we're hearing from the millennials, and that is, you know, also what are the job prospects here going forward. I get to talk to them about cybersecurity. They're all the tech generation, and they understand cyber. So not only is it a security challenge, of course, but it's also a jobs opportunity where we can get the kids focused on this as a career opportunity going forward.
Now, it's interesting. A young person in my district, a constituent, mentioned to me the other day, and I thought it was very profound. She said, Joe, I don't think that the toughest part of going to college should be paying for college. And that's what seems to be happening for a lot of young people. That, and it seems to me like there's a lack of sensitivity from these individuals who are authorizing the student loans. I've also had complaints about people that are trying to reorganize, refinance their student loans.
Yeah.
And it just isn't working.
Well, I mean, young people are leaving with crushing debt. And, you know, when I graduated from law school, I had an enormous amount of student debt, but I also was going into a job market where you could find a job.
Right.
So young people are leaving with crushing debt into a tough job market. And when you said, what is one of the ways that, you know, we can get more young people engaged, it's to focus on the issues that matter in their lives. Jim is right. The cost of higher education, we have bills to restrict the amount of interest. We have bills to allow young people to refinance. I'm actually working on a bill that will eliminate the interest in its entirety and just provide the administrative costs, because we absolutely shouldn't be making money on the backs of young people going to school. But that's only part of the problem. We have to deal with the underlying cost of education. Because even if you get rid of the interest, the cost is still high. And so how do we incentivize and how do we kind of think about changes? And the president's proposal to do free community college for 2 years,
I love that.
to then allow young people to go to four-year college for 2 years, you've cut your costs in half. So I think we've got to look at this issue. It's really hurting families. Unless you hit the lottery or you get a big inheritance, it's almost impossible to send your kids to college without
and we have a real
enormous debt.
The country has a real public policy interest in seeing that we have an educated
absolutely.
workforce.
Right.
And it's
Absolutely.
foolish that we're pricing kids out of the market. That has got to change.
And I know your alma mater, Rhode Island College, Congressman Langevin, the on-time graduation rate. We had a performance-based funding bill that we're still working on to increase on-time four-year graduation. And a young person said to me, oh, does that really affect the cost of college? I said, oh, yeah. When you only have 20-something% graduating in 4 years, that fifth year is not just the $20,000 in expenses that you're paying to the college, it's the $45,000 that you're losing. So the total cost of that fifth year is like $65,000. It's unbelievable. So I give you both a lot of credit for working on that. It's an issue that I hear about all the time. Before we wrap up, do you have anything you'd like to add to our last minute for our listeners? Anything additional that you would like to say?
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say one thing, just I want to advise your listeners, I know this is the case for both Jim and I, is if you have any dealings with a federal agency, you're having a problem with Social Security or the VA or Immigration Service, please call our offices. You know, solving individual problems for constituents is a really important part of our work, and helping people navigate some of the complications of the federal government.
Absolutely.
So call our offices, 729-5600 is my office number, and you'll probably hopefully put it on the screen, but happy to help in any way that we can.
Thank you.
And happy Thanksgiving.
I want to echo that as well. My office number is 732-9400. And we take great pride in the constituent services that we provide. You know, policy on legislation is done mainly in Washington, but where the rubber really hits the road is in constituent services and helping people to cut through red tape. You know, whether it's a veterans issue, immigration issue, Medicare or Social Security. Let us help if people are confronted with problems dealing with federal issues.
Well, thank you both, Congressman Langevin, Congressman Cicilline. This has been great, and I would like to thank our viewers for tuning in. And please remember, our democracy works best when you participate. Thank you, and have a happy Thanksgiving.